The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Want the real story behind the sound bites and headlines? Let's find the facts. Remember, it's not a conspiracy theory if it's the truth. You are not paranoid or confused. You just need to know.
Hey everybody, Kip Keefer on the road today. This is a little bit of a makeshift setup, but hopefully you can hear and see me adequately here on TKR. Always glad to be with you each and every week as we give you a Monday morning report on everything that's kind of captured our fancy imagination, whatever incensed us. Today, I've got an interesting subject to talk about. We'll get to that in just a moment. First, I hope everybody had a fantastic weekend as we get closer and closer to football season, which is my favorite time of year. And hopefully a lot of folks out there listening are getting ready for a great season of SEC and NFL football. We've got a lot of great shows supporting that on both terrestrial radio here on TKR and also on television on our Saturday morning show in Birmingham, The Starting Lineup, which is on every Saturday at 10:30 on ABC 3340. So check that out if you're in the Birmingham area. And if you're not, that show is downloaded right here to TKR and also to my landing page, kqshows.com. So you can check us out. And we've got our own YouTube page as well, where you can find the show on YouTube. The Starting Lineup is all you have to put in, and you are off and running. We've also got a great sports betting show. If you're into investing on the games on the weekends, you are missing out if you're not tuning into K4wins.com, our website. I've got a brand new article up on the site today talking about some of the more intriguing openers in college football coming up in a couple of weeks. We give you great advice. It's myself and Tony Kurre, the proprietor of this network. Also, Kai Gregory, a long background in the gaming industry and football. And also Kip Keefer, who, yes, has the same last name as I because he's my son. He's the sports editor of the Las Vegas Sun out in the desert, Sin City, Las Vegas, Nevada. And he joins us. He's one of the foremost experts on different aspects of sports investing and brings a lot to the show every week. So that's a fantastic show. If you have inclinations in that area, check us out, K4wins.com. And I'm also on local radio twice a week right here in Birmingham. I'm not in Birmingham today. Actually, I'm coming to you from Atlanta, the suburbs of Alpharetta, Georgia. Have some things going on here today and tonight, and looking forward to that. But in Birmingham, you can catch us on JOX 94.5 on Saturday mornings at 8 o'clock for Game Time. It's been Kip Keefer and the legend from the Paul Feinbaum Show recently. And we also will be debuting our Sunday show for the 9th season. Kip Keefer, the First Lady of the SEC, Terry Quillian, and we team up on Sunday mornings, 9 o'clock, with The Morning After, which is a great show. It gives everybody a chance to react to everything they saw on the field on Saturday. So with all of that shameless promotion out of the way, all things, by the way, we're within the theme, all things that you need to know. So let's get to the subject matter today. I'm a little incensed. No, I'm just going to, incensed is a too nice word. I'm pissed off the more I read about what's happening in California. Of course, California in its totality is an absolute dumpster fire with the worst leadership on earth in probably the most beautiful place in our country. So many breathtaking venues and different great things about California, but the state has been turned into a left-wing cesspool. And what's happening now that's really fired me up is reading more and more about, we all know about the LA fires and the terrible devastation it did to the so many of the major communities of Los Angeles. Pacific Palisades, a great spot, which I've had the pleasure of spending time there, completely decimated by the fires. unbelievable amount of homes and businesses and commercial buildings just burned to the ground due to the runaway wildfires. And we've talked about that here on Need to Know before, reasons that happened and the lack of preparation by the leadership in California, that this is inevitable, just like you're going to have tornadoes and floods in some places, earthquakes in other parts of the world. Fire is a sad fact in California, and there's so many things that can be done to sort of mitigate a lot of that damage. And it's shameful what they basically allowed to happen with this unprecedented fire that did so much damage. But all that has been well established. The problem now is getting people back on their feet, getting their homes rebuilt, getting their lives back together. And it's absolutely stunning that here we sit 7 months after the fact and very little has been accomplished. People are still destitute. They are displaced and living with relatives or wherever they've been able to find shelter. So many of these neighborhoods and some of the most spectacular subdivisions in the country are still just rubble. And all of the politics with this shameful bunch that are in leadership positions in California, and their inaction and really to agendize victims of this kind of magnitude of disaster is absolutely shameful. And that's what they're doing. They're exploiting an opportunity here because the extreme left, which is the hierarchy and the ruling power right now in California, maybe the bright side of this, maybe the citizens have been given a slap in the face wake-up call to not vote for these progressive leftist morons that want to turn California and the entire country, of course, into this socialist kumbaya. Everybody ties for first place. Everybody shares the wealth. It all sounds great in concept, but the history of the world, every place that this has been espoused and tried has been a miserable failure. Yes, capitalism is not always fair. A lot of times you've got to get the right breaks. You've got to have the right work ethic. You've got to make things happen. But a capitalistic system, a free market system, a free enterprise system, the founding principles of this country is by far just night and day better than this big collective government basically treating every single person like they are absolutely equal and trying to distribute wealth accordingly. It takes away incentive, it takes away production, and it makes the people that aren't interested in working hard and applying themselves, it makes them more reliant, and that's what the movement on the left wants. They want a citizenry that is totally reliant on government and distribution of needed services and whatnot. But the problem with that is, like Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister of Great Britain for so many years, the Iron Lady said, the problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money to spend. Because in a place like California, as soon as these policies become even more profound, the more and more people bail out. And it happens every day. It's been happening for the last 7 or 8 years in California. People are tired of paying excessive taxes. People are tired of subsidizing homeless drug addicts on the street, watching their cities turn into crime-riddled hellholes. They're getting the hell out of California, and God bless them. It's a smart thing to do. Let's just hope they don't go off to Texas or Tennessee or Florida and bring that California politics, because they're going to turn those places into the same, third world country that they just fled from. But all that's a sidebar. I want to talk about a big concert that was held at the end of January in Los Angeles after the fires called Fire Aid. Fire Aid was this giant 5-hour production. It had all kinds of big name musical acts. It had all these Hollywood A-list celebrities coming out, soliciting donations, asking people to generously donate from all around the country. It sold sponsorships to big corporations that raise money. And supposedly it was billed, all of the proceeds from Fire Aid was going to go to the residents of California that had been displaced and burned out and had their homes destroyed. This was supposed to be direct allocation of money. That's how it was billed anyway, to all of these victims of this terrible, unimaginable tragedy of these California wildfires, which of course were induced by nature, but enhanced by the stupidity and the ineptitude and the indifference of leadership. But as we are going to find out here in just a moment, a lot of that, just like our federal government problems, a lot of that indifference and ineptitude is kind of by design, because they're getting they're achieving something that they have long wanted to make a reality in California right now. And sadly, exploiting victims of this kind of unimaginable tragedy is absolutely the most shameful thing. And that's why that I'm bringing you all this today. So they have the big concert, Fire Aid, at the end of January. It raises $100 million. $100 million comes from Fire Aid. And now, starting in about June, 6 months removed, residents were coming forward and saying, where are those proceeds? All this was billed this was going to directly benefit us and help us in our plight here to try to rebuild our lives and salvage financially, our properties and rebuild our homes. And those people were not getting a dime, because in California, as it always is, it's billed one way and the reality is something completely different. So far, Fire Aid, which was organized by leftist leaders and government officials in California, those proceeds, they say, we're totally transparent. We did not allocate this money directly to the victims. We have given it to over 100 nonprofit organizations throughout California. Now, I don't have a list in front of me, but I can tell you that these nonprofit organizations that have gotten millions and millions of dollars from this big financial benefit concert are using that money for all kinds of political purposes, all kinds of nefarious initiatives. And really, the people that need the money, the victims of these fires, both residential and business people, are not seeing any of the benefits. And the excuse is, well, all of these organizations, they're looking at the long term. It's not like of money for the quick fix of getting people back on their feet so much as providing important healthcare resources, which that means like psychological things. It also is going to a lot of these agencies that are politically motivated, like CHIRLA, which is an acronym for a organization that is concerned about the mistreatment of immigrants to the United States. But they're not immigrants. These are the people that are organizing these protests and destructive, violent riots as ICE, the Immigration Customs Enforcement branch of the federal government, tries to arrest criminal aliens who have been accused or convicted of major crimes and let back on the streets by these progressive district attorneys that just have a turnstile for the jail instead of a cell. And so many of these people, the last huge riot in Los Angeles, 114 warrants by federal judges had been issued for criminal aliens. These were not, they weren't going out and rounding up, Paco, who was in the back room washing dishes, or migrant farm workers. There have been reports, like the recent one, where a marijuana farm was raided by ICE, but that was because there was information that there were up to 14 or 15 underage children working, basically in a slavery situation on this farm. And there were also, as it came out later, other convicted people that ICE was seeking in terms of warrants who were convicted child molesters and child porn distributors. And they're working shoulder to shoulder with underage kids at this marijuana growth. This is the kind of nefarious nonsense that's going on. And these are organizations that are getting funding, and they don't give a rat's ass, pardon my French, about anybody who's been disaffected by this fire. A lot of the people were people of means. You don't live in California in these swanky neighborhoods at Pacific Palisades or Altadena or other places where the fire took place. So there's real indifference for them because a lot of the money is going into social programs and politically motivated programs. The riots in Los Angeles over the ICE roundup of illegal aliens, criminal aliens, was neatly funded, and it's been traced back to 4 or 5 of these non-profit entities that are receiving the money that was supposed to go to the victims of this fire. So bottom line is, it's typical California. It's the same old stuff, and I used a nicer word than I was going to use there, but it's just typical that the people who really need help aren't getting it. And you might ask, well, what's going on there? If you go and drive around, and I've got some friends in California, and I've got my radio partner, Terry Quillian, who lived just about in the area that was partially affected. She lived just outside of Malibu, but in Westwood Village, but she has still friends and a lot of contacts out there who tell her that the government has really not risen a finger to help these people, that a lot of the burned down houses and businesses are still there in giant piles of rubble because residents have been so destitute financially, they don't even have the means to clear their property. And now the state and local governments are starting to fine people for not having their properties cleared of rubble in situations where these people just don't have any place to turn. If that's not bad enough, the people that have been able to do that and cleared their lots are having a hard time, an impossible time, getting building permits to rebuild. And the dirty little secret behind that is, so many of the leadership people in Los Angeles do not want these big, beautiful, expensive subdivisions with single owner homes on those properties to come back. They see this as a great opportunity to exploit that situation, not issue those building permits, hopefully hoping people will kind of give up and sell their property and get out of there, because their dream is to start building these multi-family units, at the minimum like duplexes, but at the max, in some locations, particularly some of the commercial ones, they picture all these kind of high-rise government housing kind of deals that would be up the alley of, once again, championing the causes of the people that they are really not that they really are committed to having on board, because that is the surefire way to keep power and control. If you provide all these government services, the thinking is these people will be lifelong supporters at the ballot box. And that at the end of the day is what is really important. Making the steps to have influential and wealthy voters I call them voters, but citizens who are also voters, not necessarily the sure thing that all of these constituents in California, many of them illegal, and you say, well, illegals can't vote. Well, in California, they found a way, because if you get a driver's license issued in California, it immediately registers your name on the voting rolls. And yes, obviously, that's not constitutional. Anybody who's not an American citizen is not allowed to vote in American elections, but don't kid yourself. It's happening in a lot of places in this country of the blue left-wing persuasion, and California is the prime example of that. So much nefarious activities going on. It is absolutely shameful. I also have, words to say. Donald Trump, when he was inaugurated president on January 20th, was in California on Friday. Remember, he got sworn in on Monday, signed a gazillion executive orders, hit the ground running with all kinds of policy, but got on Air Force One on that Friday, flew to North Carolina, where no federal major official had gone, where they had the horrendous flooding and the death of over 200 people the fall before. Trump went to North Carolina that day and walked around and consoled people. The federal government, of course, picking and choosing who to help there after dragging their feet for months, saying that the funding for FEMA had run out and insisting Congress give them more money. Well, it comes to light that FEMA, Federal Emergency Management, had given a big portion of their budget to giant hotel chains in New York to house illegals who are in that sanctuary city. That's not what emergency management was meant to be. And once again, big government is playing to their constituent base of people they think will be lifelong supporters. So anyway, Trump opened some bureaucratic doors, started to get those people in North Carolina some help, in Western North Carolina around Asheville, the places that were decimated by that aberrant hurricane. You don't think a hurricane is going to affect you if you live in North Carolina, especially if you don't even live on the coastal areas. But that storm was a real anomaly, because it hit on the Florida Panhandle, came up through northern Florida into Georgia, back out into the Atlantic where it reorganized, and came back ashore on the coast of the Carolinas and just dumped unprecedented amounts of rain on Western North Carolina, and literally washed away houses and whole mountains. And it was just an absolute disaster. It's the definition in capital letters of the word disaster. So all that being said, he got on Air Force One later that day and flew to California and took a helicopter tour of that decimated area. And then remember the sit down with all of the California political officials. Mayor Karen Bass was there, a lot of Congress people. Everybody made nice and talked big, Trump included, saying that, the federal government is ready to go. We're not going to let this linger. And he challenged the leaders in California to get right to work, help people get their lands cleared, get to the rebuilding process, accelerate the just belabored process that always takes forever from a bureaucratic standpoint to get people new building permits and the like. Here we sit 7 months later after Bass, the mayor, and all these different local leaders and legislators and Congress people all said, we're on board, we're ready to go, we're going to make this expedient as it can be. Well, guess what? It's 7 months later and not much has happened happened at all, and people are living a nightmare all over again. The fires and losing everything is bad enough. Now they can't even rebuild their homes on property they own. And if that's not enough, you've got people now, and this is an absolutely true story. I've seen, I've heard accounts, and again, Terry has a lot of friends. If you drive through some of these neighborhoods on these properties, you see tents and these haphazard kind of encampments. People are starting to like squat on other people's lands. Some have even gone and got driver's licenses with those addresses of those disaffected homeowners on those pieces of property. And according to California law, they can't be removed. If they position themselves there, once again, it's a bureaucratic nightmare just to get them run off your own property. So this thing is festering. It's getting worse. It's an absolute nightmare. Money is being misappropriated. People are being mistreated. And of course, the legacy media is not reporting any of this to anybody. Fox News has done a little bit of coverage. I did want to say that Trump is not completely absolved in this, because he talked that the government, the federal government, was going to take the lead on this. And I got the impression in that press conference that there was going to be tremendous pressure put on people in California. I think Donald Trump has fallen into the trap here of playing the same stupid political games. And really the victims of that are the people that were disaffected and left homeless with everything taken away from them, because it's politically expedient now for Trump to sit back and say, see, this is what I thought was going to happen. I told you in California this was going to occur. But when that kind of thing happens, I think Trump needs to go back to California immediately and say, okay, enough of this. The federal government is seizing control of this situation. We are going to be in charge now, because he has that authority. Of course, every time he tries to use that authority, just like calling in the National Guard in Los Angeles when they were burning cars and throwing projectiles at federal officers, Trump sent the National Guard in to make sure that all of the federal buildings in Los Angeles were protected and to keep the situation from getting out of hand, and was hit with hundreds of legal challenges and everybody in California screaming that he had overstepped his bounds. This is California. He's not allowed to do this. It's got to stop. It has to stop. All of these lower courts saying that the president can't take executive action when the situation is needed. And I'm sure that he's kind of sitting back and going, okay, I'm not going to dabble in California now, because everybody gets all their panties in a wad in this uproar when I do. And I'm going to sit back and watch them hang themselves, because that's what they're doing with their policies, because so many of these people that were some of the most prominent citizens in these disaffected areas are moving out and leaving for good. They're going to sell their property for low value, for next to nothing of what they could have gotten for it before all this. We saw the same thing happen in Maui and Hawaii when they had the terrible fires spawned by a hurricane and down power lines. All these people that had lived their whole lives and had property in Hawaii had impossible times rebuilding from the same bureaucratic crap, because the government knows eventually that they are going to be able, for pennies on the dollar, to acquire a lot of this property that's been damaged, and they have different plans for it than single resident homes that were the lay of the land before. They've got the whole idea about controlling as much of the wealth and as much as the property that they can possibly be in charge of. And that is the nefarious little behind the scenes secret that's not being told adequately to the American people. Do your own reading, do your own research, but by all means, before you donate any money to any of these causes, make sure that these are legitimate situations, because so much of the time when Americans, who are the most generous people in world history, Americans give money to causes like no other place on earth. And so much of that money is end up being misappropriated and used against you as an American citizen who embraces your rights and liberties and appreciates living in the greatest country ever conceived. These people are trying to tear it down. You can't rebuild it in the image that they want until you tear down what we have, and we cannot allow that to happen with nonsense like this. Fire aid is a fire fraud. It is not aiding the people that it needed to aid. It is just funding more of this leftist nightmare crap. I'm Kip Keefer. That's Need to Know for this week. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Do your own reading. Reach your own conclusions. Again, I don't want to tell you what to think. I just want to give you things to think about. We'll be back next week right here on TKR. Have a blessed week, everybody.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.